This is no small miracle. God is always on the move. Join Amy Tanan and Claudia Lodgemer as they share their hearts with you on being intentional with the way we are meant to do life with Jesus. Let's dive in deeper.
Hello. Welcome back, guys, to No Small Miracle. I am Claudia.
What's up, guys? And I'm Amy.
And we're so excited that you are tuning in once again.
Yes. By the time that you see this, you listen to this audio, you will already see us with that video.
Face to face. So you know what we look like now.
So we know what you look like. So let us know if you really enjoyed it, if you liked it. We can do more. And so we really had a lot of fun being able to talk to you guys about our new logo and cover and all of that. So
yes,
we have a lot of exciting things happening, right?
We do.
We do.
We're still working on the giveaway. We haven't forgotten about that. And then today we have a very, very special treat, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, for sure. And we want to say that we have somebody in the house, and her name is Araceli.
Araceli. What do you prefer?
Sally's okay.
Okay.
Yes. Well, so Sally is, she's my cousin. And so I've known her since literally forever. She knew me before I even knew that I knew her. Because she was born
you sound
first.
like Jesus. Right?
Now I love her because she first loved me. But so I'm so excited to have her here and for her to just have a conversation with us. And Claudia, you've known her for...
Yeah, for a long time also.
Too.
I mean, we used to all have like sleepovers together and all this stuff. So basically, like around the same time that I met Amy, I met Araceli at church. So we've all grown up. We've been there through...
We got some history too.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
With the dating, marriages, kids.
Families.
Everything.
Yeah.
So... I mean, this is family. This is family. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Sally, if you want to just kind of share with our listeners a little bit about who Sally is. And I think most importantly, what was your Jesus moment? One where you like, this is it. I have to walk with Jesus. So go ahead.
Okay, so hello, my name is Araceli, but they call me Sally, like we said, and I am a mom, a wife, a friend, and a teacher. I currently am a second grade teacher, and I have 2 little kids. I've been married for almost 6 years this year.
Wow.
6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 years. And I feel like my Jesus moment... I want to say it was when I first gave my life to Jesus, when I was 7 years old. I remember that was like the moment where, a lot of kids, maybe sometimes they just say the prayer whenever they're led by just a leader at church or a teacher at church. But I think for me, the way my mom presented it to me, I remember specifically where I was in our little apartment, like sitting in the bed and remembering just wanting this person that my mom was describing that was, a great God, yet he could be our friend and he could love us and he wanted to be my friend. And so I think that was the moment that I completely said, okay, I want him to be a part of my life. And there has been, there's been different points in my life, I feel, that I have grown closer to him. Then we had our encounter with Holy Spirit, and that was a new journey. Then I went through a stage in my life where, getting older and everything, where I call it my dark ages, where it was just very, very dark. But I know that when I said yes to Jesus when I was a little girl, and everything that I did up to that moment helped me stay grounded in that dark age and those dark moments where I just wanted it just Jesus was what kept me, going. And I feel like there's just been different moments in my life that have been key to where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. And I know that one of the reasons why we wanted you to be part of this, we know that you recently walked through something that was hard, but I think that one of the most amazing things was that for us that were surrounding you, we learned a lot from you. Even though you were the one going through the difficult situation, there was something that just really spoke and really just stood out about how you not just walked through the journey, but I think one of the key words that you said is that in all your years, Jesus is what grounded you. And I think that that was so evident with what you went through. You were just so grounded. And I think we were all like, what's going to happen? But you just, you remained grounded. And that was so amazing. So if you want to just go ahead and share a little bit about that, we would love it.
Yes. Okay. So like I said, I'm a teacher, and it happened in my career. What we're the situation that we're going to talk about. But before that, I've always been like an all about school type of person. Like I love school, and it is something that my mom just really, I think as a kid really pounded on me, but then I learned to love it. Like and I always strive to get the best grades. I'm not the smartest, but I would work for it. I would just like really study. And there was a lot of moments in my life where school has been everything. And then afterwards, after I went to school to become a teacher, and I love it. And so to lead up to this moment, so many things had happened. We went through COVID, and that year we just stayed at home, and as a family, we went through like a very special moment through Holy Week, I guess we could say, like Holy Week, Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday, and Good Friday. And as a family, we experienced it so beautifully at home, like never before. And we knew that whenever things opened up again, we wanted to do it at church. And so we knew with my husband, like, this is something we have to do with our church. And so we did, right? The next year, which was this year that just happened, things started opening up little by little. But at the same time, that was my first year going back to work as a teacher, because I had Levi. So I took 2 years off, and then I started up, and it was the toughest year that I went through as a wife, as a mom, as everything. It was just so hard for, those listeners. I know some of you guys, are younger. Some of you guys just have a different career path, but I feel like we all just went through a really hard time during COVID, and even a little after COVID, just trying to figure out how we were going to do our jobs, how we were going to work from home, having your kids, having your family. So literally it was like, waking up from the moment I clocked in at like 7 till like I put my kids to sleep, and I kept working because it was just so much work. And so when we finally went back into the classroom, the work was just crazy, right? And so I worked really hard this year. I feel like a lot of teachers can identify with me. We worked a lot harder than we have in other years. For sure. Just, trying to like figure things out. And so for me to be able to work, I have a work permit that allows me to work. And so when I was first, like, trying to get rehired and everything at the school that I worked my first year, my work permit was going to expire in the middle of April. And I remember thinking, oh crap, they may not want to hire me, because what if my work permit doesn't arrive and they ask me questions? And I was just like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. If they mention it at the, rehiring or whatever process, then I guess I won't be able to work. But if they don't say anything, then God will figure it out. And so anyway, so they didn't say anything, and I started working, and I was just like, okay, God will figure it out. And I forgot about it, right? And so why I mentioned the Holy Week was because in this year during, the beginning of April was when we started like figuring all these plans that we were going to do with our church for Holy Week. And it was like a couple of weeks right before my work permit expired, and I was not even thinking about it. By this point, my husband was just like, hey, it's about to expire. We had already renewed, but because of COVID, all of these processes have like been really backed up. And I'm like, no, it's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be okay. And he's like, but you might want to talk to your principal, make sure she knows, make sure you guys have a backup plan, or just figuring it out. And I did talk to my principal at the end of March, and I told her, and she's like, yes, I'll contact HR. It'll be fine. And so I kept working, kept doing what I was doing. And then, we have our Holy Week experience, right? We have a really beautiful moment with our church. And during that time, I feel like it was that Good Friday that I was, in a moment of just like prayer. And I remember just thinking like, God, I love you so much, Jesus. Like, that's all I want. I just want you. And I didn't know that in that prayer, I was surrendering everything. I've had moments where I'm like, Lord, I surrender. And, you can have it all. But I feel like there's areas that we don't allow God to come in. And he wants to walk with us in those areas too. And in this moment, I felt like my heart meant every area. And one of those areas that I had not surrendered yet because it's just so important to me, it's so dear to me, was school.
Wow.
In every aspect, right? Because I mean, I want to go back to get my master's, and just I have a lot of dreams with school, and school is really important, and even my kids, right? But anyway, so I felt like without me saying it, I was just like, I just want you, Jesus. I didn't know what that meant. And I just felt like during that week here with our church, or that weekend, I came to the realization that Jesus has done so much for us with the cross, with his sacrifice, that's enough. That was enough. And I remember telling him that's enough. Like all my blessings that I have, my beautiful family, our little apartment, my friendships, just the love of my family, all of that is extra. Like you answering my prayers, all of that is extra. If all of that would stop, it would be okay because you're enough. That's just you lavishing your love on us. And that's all me, praying to him, and that's it. And then, we go back on Monday and I get an email from HR. Hey, your work permit isn't here yet. If you don't have it by April, I think it was 11th or 15th, we need it by then. So I go talk to my principal again, and I'm like, hey, it's April already. It's supposed to be here by the 15th. It's still not here. What are we going to do? Yeah. And she just said, okay, let me contact HR. And that was it, right? I went through my day with my kids. I was doing small group, and a lady comes in, one of the workers at our school comes in, and she's like, hey, you need coverage? And I look at her confused. I'm like, why? What happened?
This is
and then
teaching.
While I'm teaching, yes, like I'm in small group with my kids, and she comes and I'm like, I need coverage. Like, where am I going? And she's like, yeah, she said my principal's name told me to come cover you. And I'll look at my phone, and I'm like, and she texted me like, hey, I'm sending so-and-so to cover you. We need to talk to you. So I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, wow.
Like I knew, okay, like it's good. It's about to get real.
Yeah.
I walk into her office, and the other APs are there too. And so like I sit down, and she's like, Ms. Venturini, we talked to HR, and they said that if your work permit doesn't arrive by this time, you're going to have to resign. And so I just look at her, and I feel like they were expecting a reaction out of me, that I was just like, oh, yeah, we saw this coming with my husband, I figured, I was like, if I don't get it, I'm probably going to have to resign.
Wait, but so it's like you're literally in the room with all the principals.
Yes, and it's just me sitting there, and I'm just like,
and
oh.
you just hear the big words, resign.
Yeah, and I'm
like an echo.
Oh
resign.
my gosh.
And they're all looking at me like they want to cry for me, right? And I'm like, okay, I understand. And they were just like, we're really sorry about this. Like, we wish it didn't have to happen. I was like, yes, me too. It's okay. I don't remember much of the conversation. I just remember like, oh my gosh, it's happening.
Yeah.
So like I walk out of the office, and I'm like walking to my classroom, but I was like, no, wait, I think I need to stop by the restroom first. So I go into the restroom, and like I just feel the tears coming. And I'm like, no, okay, it's going to be okay. Like, I have to get back to my classroom. I don't want my kids seeing that I'm crying. So like, I'm like, we'll process this later. So like, I walk back into my classroom, and, the girl that came to cover me, she's like, is everything okay? And when people ask you if you're okay at that moment,
like
that you don't
thing.
want them to ask you. And I just I'm telling her, no, please don't ask me. Like I turn to the side because I can feel the tears coming again. And I just clean up my tears a little bit. And she's like, okay, we'll talk about it later. And I just sit down to continue my small group. Like, it was like after lunch. So by this point, it was like maybe 1:00. I still had to make it till 3. So I just keep doing everything with the kids. But I feel like I'm there, but like watching myself from the outside, like everything that I worked for, everything that I love doing, like it's about to go away. And so anyway, I text my husband. I'm like, hey, call me. Cause we both work for the same school district. So he calls me from his phone at his classroom to my phone in my classroom. And he's like, what happened? And I'm like, they said I'm going to have to resign. And he's like, okay, we're going to start praying. Like, it's going to be okay. God is going to do something. And so immediately I get the text messages, right? And he texts our group of friends. He texts like our pastoral group, like, we need prayer. We need to receive an answer by this date. And I'm like, wait, like you're already telling everyone and I haven't even processed what's going on. So I start getting text messages from people like, God is with you. You're going to be okay. And it was just really hard. Like, I remember just going home that day and just crying, just being like, okay, like what's going to happen now? Like I'm going to have to resign. Like I wasn't scared. I wasn't confused. I think I was just like, okay, this is happening. And then, with the messages that I was getting, They were very encouraging messages, but I feel like because I was going through the process of everything, I was like, wait, but like, because they were like, just trust in God. God is with you. And I was like, yes, I do know, but I haven't even had time to go and pray yet. And I know that like in that moment, like I was just crying and I was just like, I guess I was just in the process of trying to figure out how I should react. I was getting these messages from my friends and from my family. And then I was having these feelings. And then my husband was like over here. And I'm like, I haven't figured out how I want to, like how I'm going to process that. Like, me crying was just like, wait, then does that people around me think I'm not trusting Jesus? Because I really wanted to cry because I was really sad. But it wasn't because I was like mad at God. I feel like, we had gone through something very similar my first year of getting hired. And we saw this like huge miracle by the Lord where he moved things that, we talked to people in different, positions and they were like, it's just, you're just going to have to wait on the timeline. It's not going to happen anytime sooner. And we got it within a week. Like I said, we don't expedite these things and they expedited it, like my first year, like back in 2017. So we knew God could do it. Yeah. And my husband was really holding on to that. Like God could, if he did it once, he's going to do it again. But my heart was just like, well, if he doesn't do it, it's okay. Like, if I have to resign, it's okay. But I just didn't know. I didn't know how to react because I felt like people around me with their words and even my husband were expecting me to act a certain way, but I felt like after, I think on Tuesday, because that happened on a Monday, on Tuesday, I would go back to school. And it was that same week, like that. It was that Wednesday that it was supposed to get there. And now it was Tuesday. And it wasn't, it wasn't there yet. And so Tuesday, I'm like, okay, like I'm going through the process and I'm like, okay, I'm sad and I want to cry, but that doesn't mean I don't trust God. And so like, speaking to like Amy, she was like, you need to just go through it. If you need to cry about it. If you need to, be angry about it, be angry about it. Just let yourself feel what you're feeling. And it was true. Like I realized like, yeah, like I want to cry because I'm sad that I may lose my job, but not because that doesn't mean I don't trust God. Because I knew deep inside of my heart, I was trusting. And that whole time that, like it was just those 3 days, because they told me they were going to let me stay until the end of the week. But then HR was like, no, if she doesn't get it by the 15th, she can't stay in the classroom anymore. And so anyway, so I felt like during that time, I was just in prayer. And it wasn't like moments where I would like go into my closet and pray. It was like on my car ride, going home, and I just started crying. And I was like, God, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening, but it is well. Like it is well with my soul. And I really felt it. And, I was looking, I was like, wait, I think that's a song lyric from some song. Cause I'm really bad with song lyrics. Like I remember little parts and I make up parts and I'm like, I think that's a song. So like, I'm like asking Amy, is there a song that says this? I just felt like my soul wanted to hear that song. Yeah. Okay. So, and so, yeah, like I found it and I'm going to read a little bit of the lyrics. You guys tell me if I'm going, okay, it's too much.
No, you're totally fine.
So, and it goes with actually a psalm. I'm going to read the psalm first because I didn't even know, right? Like sometimes I feel like, as you grow up, when you grow up in God, you hear verses and and they stay there. Yeah. They stay there. And in those moments, they come. Like you may not remember the whole, verse and where it's at, but just those things, like just those little, I guess, little verses come up to your mind. And so it says, oh, wait, hold on. I think I lost it. Let me go back.
And I think it's crazy. Well, not crazy, but I think people automatically assume that when you're Christian, you don't go through difficult things, or it's not acceptable to be mad at God
or feel certain things.
Yeah, or not trust him or and have these thoughts. But I think that's the beautiful thing about walking with a God that is so real and so close, that he already knows, like he pre-knows what's going to happen and how you're feeling, but he wants to just hear it from you and he wants to go through it with you. And so I think that was something beautiful to see, just like the unfolding, the unwinding of those emotions and those things that she was going through, and how God was just so present there and just like, okay, yeah, like you can
it's
be
okay
that.
To feel that.
Yeah. And I think that's very encouraging for anybody that's listening that might feel afraid to just let themselves go or be honest with God about how they feel about that situation, and just know that like there's space for that. There's room in his presence, in his great love for you to feel that way and express that. So I think that's awesome.
Okay, so I can't find the song, but look, I'm gonna read the lyrics because the first part is that song. So I'll look for it in a little bit. So, anyways, it says it's called "It Is Well," and it says, "Grander earth has quaked before, moved by the sound of his voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calmed and broken for my regard." And so I felt like that to me spoke like, you know, this amazing God that made the earth, you know, that formed everything, you know, that can calm all of this.
Yeah.
For my regard, you know, and it keeps saying, you know, the chorus of it says, you know, it says, "So let go my soul and trust in him. The waves and wind will still know his name." And so it just keeps repeating that. So it's like the waves and wind still know his name. And so to me, it was just like through this moment that I was going through, God was still God. You know, like God still knew me. Like he knows I need the job. He knows, and not only that, he knows I love it. Right? Like that was the amazing thing. And it just keeps saying, you know, it is well with my soul. You know, and through it all, my eyes are on you. So I just kept praying this, you know, and just listening to the song on my way to work those last 2 days that I had, you know, and I just kept telling myself, you know, I remember my husband coming in on, I think it was Tuesday night, like the day right before, you know, my last day of work. And he was just like, "Okay, I feel like we need to pray more." And I was crying and I was just like, "Look, I want you to know that I am crying not because I'm not trusting God or not because I'm disappointed in God." I'm like, I feel like if this was happening to me back in 2017, I would have been like, "God, but I love you. And look at all the things that I've done. And you can't just do this one thing for me." Like, I feel like that would have been, because my relationship with him, even though, like I said earlier, you know, it's been since kids that I've, you know, I really gave my life to him. But I just feel like all of these other moments that I have gone through, even my dark ages, have led up to this moment that was happening right now. And so I told him, I was like, you know, I'm not crying because I'm sad that he's not answering our prayer. And by this moment, like we had called the offices that we needed to call. We had done what we had, you know, they had told us like, "Okay, we might be able to expedite the process. We just need to turn in this form." We did that. And then they call me back and they're like, "Oh, wait, no, I'm so sorry. We don't expedite for this kind of case." And okay, so we're just like, okay. And so I told my husband, I remember sitting there crying. And I'm like, you know, I feel like my heart is at peace with this. Like, you know, my heart is like, even if it, like God can do it, like I know he can, but even if he doesn't answer in the way that we wanted him to, I'm not going to be shaken. My relationship with him does not depend on this one thing getting answered. And so he looked at me and he was just like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "I'm just crying because I worked really hard this year." You know, I had I feel like a lot of teachers can relate with me, or maybe even spouses of teachers or sisters or cousins or friends that lived right there with friends that were teachers. You know, I had like a meltdown in like December that I thought, this is it. Like, I'm going to have to resign. And I remember in that week, like the Lord, I just felt like he literally grabbed me from how I was feeling in December. Like I had almost like a panic attack that I didn't want to go back to work after Christmas break. And I just remember him just like, I feel like it was like he just scooped me up and just like moved me. And it was like day and night, you know? Anyway, so like going through all of this, me thinking about that in that moment, right? That night, like in my bed, I'm just like, you know, I'm crying because I worked so hard. My kids, they've been through so much this year. It's been so hard for families. And now their teacher is going to get removed. Like they're going to get a new teacher, like almost at the end. Like I was thinking about that. So that really made my heart sad, right? And so I'm like, that's why I'm crying. Not because I'm not trusting God. I'm like, you know, I felt like in a moment where I said, Jesus is enough. Like, you know, he took it literally. And, you know, and I feel like he's not giving me an option to pick or choose, right? But even if he was like, I will give you your work permit or me. who would you pick? My heart would say him automatically.
Yeah.
In this moment, he's not giving me a choice. Like, it's just kind of like happening, right? And so he's like, okay, well then if your heart is so like that, then okay. Like, I feel like he was a little bit more emotional about it than I was. But anyway, so I wake up Wednesday knowing that it's my last day. And, you know, I go and I'm having the day with my kids. You know, we didn't necessarily tell my kids that I was like, you know, resigning. At the end of the day, I had to tell them, you know, I was going to take a short leave of absence because we were praying that it would come like at the end of April or in 2 weeks, and I could come back, because that's what HR had said.
Yeah.
But so I come and tell my kids at the end of the day, and I'm like, okay, don't cry. But like, you know, I feel the tears coming, and I'm like cleaning myself, and I tell my kids, and I'm like, you know, kids, this is my last day with you guys. I have to leave for a little bit. And they're like, where are you going? Like, you know, they're like, I'm a bilingual teacher. They're like, maestra, ¿quién va a estar con nosotros? Like, who's going to be with us? And I'm like, you know, there was another teacher that had been there shadowing me that day, just me trying to show her everything, the routines of my class. I'm like, but she's going to do everything almost like I do it. You guys are going to be okay. They're like, but are you going to come back? I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to come back, but you just still have to keep working really hard. You know, you're almost at the end. You're almost ready for 3rd grade. But, you know, I'm like saying this with like tears, and then my kids start crying. So like I'm crying more. And it was just really sad. Like, it was sad for us to like be at that moment like that, like to end like that. But it was well with my soul. Like, I'm like, whatever happens, God is still God. And, you know, he still loves me, and he's going to provide. Yeah. And, you know, and it didn't come in the 2 weeks that we wanted to. It didn't come until like the end of May. And like almost at the end of the school year, right? And so through this whole time, I just kept asking, like, well, why did this happen? Like, why did you allow this to happen? You know, why did this play off the way it played off? Like, are you trying to teach me something else? Like, is there something that you want me to do? And I just, you know, I was like, even if it doesn't come anymore, like, what if it doesn't get approved anymore and I don't get to work? Like, I remember praying and, you know, talking to Jesus one of those days. And I'm like, you know, I love teaching. You know, I love being in the classroom with my kids and just seeing their faces light up when they finally get something, working through the process of them not understanding until they're able to get it. I'm like, you know, I love that. And I know you've called me for that, but was it just for a moment? Like, and if it was, then okay, we'll figure out what comes next. But it did come, you know, it came at the end of May, and I had the opportunity to like reapply for my position. So I'm going back next year, and I'm going back to 2nd grade, and I'm really excited. I just felt like I learned a lot during that time to just trust God, and just, you know, sometimes we pray for something and we expect our answer to look a certain way, but it looks completely different.
Right.
You know, and it's for whatever he wants. And I feel like I had an early vacation, right? Like an early start to my summer. But during that time, I felt like the Lord just wanted me to keep just having deeper conversations with him, which I wouldn't have had time for that. And then my husband went through like a really hard time with, you know, losing his grandpa, and we had to keep flying back and forth from Colorado to Houston. And I feel like if I would have still been in school finishing, I mean, for all my teacher friends out there, you know, the last months of school are really busy with like getting all these things ready. And I feel like I wouldn't have been able to be fully there for like my mother-in-law and, you know, even the grandma in Colorado. Like, I feel like I wouldn't have been able to be fully there, and explaining it to Abby too, because she wanted to be a part of it. So I felt like the Lord knew the timing of everything. And I was able to be there for my husband. I was able to be present in those moments, you know, and then, you know, grandma was able to come down to Houston afterwards, and I was able to be here and just help in whatever needed to, you know, where I could be of help. So I just felt like it was a very key moment that the Lord knew my husband was going to need me, and his grandma and his mom. And so, you know, and even Abby. So I felt like it was just a perfect timing. Wow. But yeah, so that's what happened.
Wow. I mean, and this is exactly why we wanted to have her just explain and tell everything that she went through, because I feel like we wouldn't be able to do it just how she did it. And so I think the most beautiful thing about all of this is just that surrender, that beautiful surrender of just whatever this looks like, God, but as long as I'm doing this with you, I think that's more than enough. And I like what she said, that God knew the timing. God knew the reason why. And a lot of the times, that's why the Bible tells us, my ways are not your ways. My thoughts are not your thoughts. And what does that look like? This, you know, like even though your thought was to finish school and to end the school year and all of that, but my thoughts were, I need you to be present for this. I want you to go through this. I want you to experience this and find me in this way. And so I think that that's something that is beautiful. I want to ask you, going through a situation like this without God, what would that have looked like for you? Or what would have come over you? Or, like
I think,
God?
and I feel like I kind of had already experienced that in December, right? Like, I was just so focused and so, I feel like for all of us this year with COVID, and like I said, with many teachers, like you were just so overtaken by all the stress, by trying to close those gaps with your kids, and just depending on the school district, like all these expectations put on teachers and their students, and then just seeing the gaps, how much they needed to catch up, and all the workload that we had. And then, if you had a family too, taking care of your family, your husband, your kids, like it was just a lot of pressure. And in those moments, I didn't have time to pray. I didn't have time to read my Bible, which all in all meant I didn't have time for God. And so I feel like that I was doing without God. So I feel like that's why it come December, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, there's no way I'm going to make it to the end of the year. Like that night I couldn't sleep. Like that whole night I would like sleep for like 10 minutes and wake up in like panic, just thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to go to work tomorrow and I'm not getting enough sleep and I'm going to be tired. And then all these things, like it was
you were
so
already telling me, she's like, what am I going to do when I go back? Like for after break, I'm just like, just enjoy the break. And
I couldn't.
About that later,
and I feel like that was like me doing it without God. And all this anxiety and all these expectations and all this fear of just not, and it was just, so I feel like if I would have gone through this without God, I don't know, like I feel like depression would have been a huge thing for me, because I feel like already in December I was already feeling that like the joy of what I love to do was just sucked out of it. Like I just didn't want to go back to work. I'm like, I won't be able to make it through the year. And I remember looking at Pablo and just telling him, babe, how am I going to make it through the end of the year? Like I'm not going to make it, and just feeling like just like that anxiety of like, oh my gosh. And I remember, that night I didn't sleep, right? That whole night I kept waking up every 10 minutes and just crying. And it was something I couldn't control. And I remember then Monday I went to work and I like, in every little thing I wanted to start crying. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? And then I went to go pick up my kids from my mom's house on Monday. And I hadn't shared with my mom what had happened, right? And I was leaving her house, driving back home, with the kids in the car. And we had just passed up my dad, so we kind of just waved at him. But I was like at the light, after leaving my parents, and I drove past, there was red, and then I was like, should I go back? And I should have told my mom, and I didn't, right? And I drove, it turned green, and I drove, and then I was just like, oh my gosh, what if I can't sleep again tonight? And that anxiety started coming again. And I was like, oh my God, am I gonna, like, is this gonna be the rest of my life now? So I remember just going a U-turn, and I'm like, no, I have to go back home to my mom and just share with her and at least have her pray for me. And I remember just telling my friends during that time, like, hey, I'm not doing good, just pray for me. Like that's all that's all I could do. And so I feel like that's what it would have been, like just a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression and anger too, because this is something that I really worked for, I worked really hard that year for it to just be taken away like that, quote unquote, taken away. I mean, the district had the right, it was, I didn't have my work permit. There was nothing they could really do. But it almost seemed like an unfair situation. I feel like, if just looking at it without God, it was really unfair. Like, why would you do this to a teacher? How we've been through so much this year. And to some students, like, they've been through so much, and now you're just going to take away their teacher. You couldn't extend it. I mean, there was so many people at, in my school that I was sharing this with them, right? Like, hey, I'm not going to be here. My interventionists, my specialists. And they were like, what? They can just do that? Like, they were getting upset and I was like, no, but I'm praying and I'm trusting God. Like, that was my answer, right? And they're like, okay, but do something else. Like, So, But I wanted to share right before we go back to you guys. Like, I found the verse. It's Psalms 46, and it says, God is our refuge and strength, and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. So all of this is like, though the world can be falling apart, God is our refuge and our strength and our ever-present help. So just knowing that he was there with me. I mean, to some people it may look like, well, but he didn't answer your prayer. You know, you didn't get your work permit. Like, you still, but it was like knowing that I wasn't going through it alone or in my own strength. I think that's what, you know, like what helped. Like, I wasn't being strong for the people around me, because for a moment I was like, wait, but I can't cry because the people around me are going to think I'm not trusting God. You know, I have to answer a certain way because they may think that, oh, she's not trusting God. Well, God's not going to answer. Like, no, it was like, I'm crying because it's a sad thing, but I'm trusting God. You know, so it's feeling what I was feeling, but I'm trusting God. And even going to God and being like, God, I am sad. You know, I'm going to leave my students, but I trust you. And so it's like, you know, and like the world could be falling apart, but I'm trusting in God, because it's not me who's holding me up. It's so you who's holding me.
And I know we've gone a little bit over our usual time, but one last question, and I want you to address the listeners. If whoever is listening and is going through something similar, whether they're in a period where they're waiting for something from God and it's not going the way they think it should be answered, you know, or if they got their answer but it looks completely different than what they expected, if you could just speak to them on what you would advise and then finish off by praying over them, we would really appreciate that.
Okay. My advice, you know, would be for anyone out there listening, and even if it's someone that may not be a believer, right? Or has been kind of like shaky with the Lord, just look to Jesus. Like, that would be my response. Like, look to Jesus, and, you know, your prayer may have been answered in a different way that you were expecting, or it just maybe didn't get answered yet, but just look to Jesus and just say, okay, are you trying to teach me something else through this? You know, what are you trying to say through this? And just position your heart. And like, I may not understand, I may not even know how to pray to you, but I just want my heart to want you. And in that, he's going to start just bringing everything else, you know, and positioning it where it needs to be positioned. And then you'll understand, maybe not at the moment, but later, this is why I answered this way. You know, this is why I did things this way. But in all, just look to Jesus, because I feel like he's the one that is going to be able to just hold you in those moments. So I want to go ahead and pray.
Go ahead and pray.
Jesus, we thank you so much for just the testimonies. Thank you for what you allow to happen in our lives, or just things that happen in our life because it just happens, but then the beauty that you bring out of it, Lord. And I thank you right now for every listener, every person that is able to just tune in today and listen to this message, Lord. And I pray over them right now that if they're going through a situation where they may not understand what's happening, or they're waiting for an answer, Lord, I just pray that they're able to just come to you, that they're able to just look to you, Jesus, that if they may not know how to do that, that they can just say, Jesus, I look to you. Whatever that means, however that looks, I look to you, Jesus. Help me. Like it says, you're ever present in our moments of trouble, and even in the moments of beauty, Lord. So I just pray for every listener right now, Lord, that they're able to just trust in you, that they're able to just feel your presence in that situation that they may be going through, Lord. And that when the prayer gets answered, Lord, that you're able to just reveal the entire picture, Lord, because we only see a part, but you see everything, Lord. So give us eyes to see too. I pray for every person listening, Lord, and I pray for their lives and for their situation, that they're able to see victory, because that is what you want for us, Lord. You want a life full of victories and a life full of just joy and full of life, even in the moments of trouble, even in the moments where everything seems to be falling apart, because you are always there, Lord. Thank you so much, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to everybody that listening today. If you have any questions, or if you want to just say a comment or something, don't forget to share this. If you feel like a friend, a cousin, an aunt, uncle can relate to this,
or a teacher,
go ahead and share, please. And thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.